Welcome to Future Forward. This is Teresa Spangler, CEO of Plaza Bridge Group and host of Future Forward. I am thrilled today to have with me Rita Ernst, who is the owner of Ignite Your Extraordinary. I'm really excited to talk to her. I've only been talking to her for a few seconds before we even started, and she's already ignited my interest in lots of different areas. So Rita has, you are known as a secret weapon for success that you coach a lot of companies, a lot of teams around positivity. You like helping to alleviate this distressed feeling, the anxiety and the toxicity in companies. And this is just such a big need right now. So maybe you can help us a little bit today in our discussions about one, what can we do? So we'll share some tips. I would love to have some tips. But first, I want to dive into how in the world did you become a secret weapon, and where's this interest and passion come from?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for inviting me to your podcast, Teresa. I'm really excited. I started listening to some episodes after we were introduced, and I'm a fan. So I hit the subscribe button. I hope everybody else is doing that too. I just think you are having some extraordinary conversations with some really super interesting individuals. So I am honored to be a guest on your show. And you know, that's it's very interesting that one of my clients actually started introducing me that way. You're my secret weapon. And then a couple of other people that are local that we all sort of know each other. You know, you run in same circles together. We're like, oh yeah, she's my secret weapon too. And the whole tagline of that is your secret weapon for more success and less sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like to work with smaller businesses, not so much large. I grew up in large corporations. I learned a ton working in Fortune 200 organizations. And thank you very much, because I use all of that in my private practice now. But I really love being with those independently owned companies and those founders and families that are running those companies.
The family offices, family business. Yeah.
Yes. And it's not always family. Sometimes it's a founder with a lot of other people. But what happens when it's family or founder is there is a passion. People start a business because they know where their gift and their talent and their amazingness is, and they want to bring it into the world.
Yeah.
Most of us, that's how I started my business. You don't start a business saying, I want to run a business. I just can't wait to do accounting and marketing. And right? Nobody is the person that's doing that. They're like, I love making this widget, or I love helping businesses do their taxes, or I love helping people with their mental health needs. And I want to serve that community and do something for them. Then you find out you have to do all of these other things.
Sure. Yeah.
To run a business. And that's where the sacrifice starts to happen, because just upskilling yourself, learning everything that you need to learn, managing all of those pieces and parts when you're just starting out, right? That is a small amount. So let's just take a really simple example that people understand: bookkeeping. When you first start out your business, you don't even have to necessarily do the bookkeeping every month. Let's be honest. You can sort of let it stack up and once a quarter touch it, and just, you know, it'll be taking longer time. But, you know, let's say that if you were doing your bookkeeping every week, you might be spending 90 minutes to do that bookkeeping at the start. Now let's grow your business to 10 times that size, right? 90 minutes now becomes 2 or 3 days. You've got all of this invoicing, receivables, all of these things that have to be sorted. Now, out of a 40-hour week, instead of 90 minutes, this is maybe taking a half a day or a full day out of your 40-hour week. Right? Well, you can't afford to do that because you're still trying to grow your business. You're trying to serve the clients you already have. So where does that extra half a day or day come from? the evening hours after the kids go to bed, the weekends, right? And this is where the sacrifice part comes in. People don't necessarily know or trust their ability to afford the resources that they need to continue to grow and scale their business without burning out themselves.
Right.
So the first people typically in a small business to feel the burnout is the owner of the business.
Sure. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I love you owners, but you become these huge bottlenecks that drive your teams crazy because you centralize all the power, all the decision making, everything around your brain, around your hands, around your thoughts, and you are hamstringing, you're tying up your team and they're waiting for you, and you have too many competing things. And so all of a sudden they now have an emergency 911 fire drill, have to stay and work late to get done because you could not give what they needed, the time and attention until this moment. It's when it made the most sense for you, but now they're going to have to scramble to meet their deadline.
Right.
So all of a sudden you start to shift the energy in your business and the relationship with your people. And that's where some of that toxic stuff can start to come in.
It trickles down. It trickles into,
yeah. So you're feeling the stress, and now you're creating more stress for your team, and people start complaining. Well, the first thing people start doing is they commiserate. They start talking, oh my gosh, this is so, why can't we get this stuff on time, right? Then they start outright complaining. They start attacking you as the leader, and then they start infighting, and then it's all chaos and total, dumpster fire kinds of things going on. So the reason why people call me their secret weapon is the fix to this is rather easy, but you have to ask for help, because you as the business owner, you have so many demands on your time and attention that it is impossible by yourself to elevate out of all of this day to day and really figure out what's the next smartest thing that I could do that would unburden me and help my organization flow better. I love you, but you may know you need to ask that question, but you are going to be too mentally exhausted to do it. And so what I do is I create the space. That's the secret weapon part. It's just creating that space with a business owner to really allow them to start to tackle those conversations, but from a more accelerated place.
So tackle the conversations within their team. So it's really bringing in authenticity and transparency to open up the dialogue. Are you saying that in itself helps to start to alleviate that stress, because then you can put a plan of action together?
Yes, you're going to bring your team in. We're going to start thinking about, I'm going to ask you questions like, what's your zone of genius?
Yeah.
Right now you're the chief operating officer, the CEO, you might be the CFO, you might be the chief marketing, you might be doing all the biz dev.
Sure.
Right. You've given yourself 5 jobs.
Yeah.
And we're going to say, uncle,
yeah,
5 jobs is too many.
So
right?
How are you delegating?
Yes.
The delegation.
And who do you have in your team? So what's the next smart hire you need to make? Right. How do we think 2 or 3 chess moves down the road so that you are bringing in the right kind of talent that's going to allow you to grow the business and then have your key lieutenants in place? One of the biggest things that I do is help people build out their first leadership team. Let's get you out of managing your business. Let's get you in that CEO hat.
Yeah.
And let's elevate you. And that means that you've got to put a team around you. Yeah. And some of those people already live in your business, and some of those people you might need to outsource to. Sure. But, a lot of people in a smaller business, they might use a fractional CFO or fractional CMO, where they're just getting a piece of somebody.
Right. Well, so first tell me how you got here. What's motivated you? Where does all your positivity come from?
So I'm an organizational psychologist, and I fell in love with psychology in high school. And I I was in all through high school thinking, what do I want to do? Do I want to just go be a therapist or something? What do I want to do with my love of psychology and really understanding what drives us as human beings? Why do we do what we do? How do we make the choices that we make? And actually, IO psychology was just emerging. So I'm really dating myself here, but it was just emerging as a field. But I remember telling my parents, I want to bring business and psychology together. And then I found industrial and organizational psychology. And I just think it is completely fascinating, just to the core fascinating, of how we as human beings engage to make things happen, how we come together in groups, because that's all workplaces are. It's bringing groups of people together to create some outcome.
Right.
And so there is so much about our human nature and the psychology of that. So we're looking at learning theory, motivation theory, social psychology, all of those pieces come together in my work.
Right.
And so, the passion is just, we spend the most of our waking hours and our person-to-person engagement in the workplace once we become adults.
Right.
So let's make that the place we want to be. I mean, having that be a place that you have to hang out versus a place that you want to hang out, which would you choose? I wanted to be the place I want to hang out. I want to help business owners. And that's the other thing. Nobody sets out when they start up their business. Nobody wants to create that horrible dumpster fire place. Nobody wants to work. Everybody wants to, surround themselves with people that help them, that fill their cup, that help them, that make this chasing their passion, their dream, as fulfilling as possible. And I think that's what every person, we've learned that over and over and over again. You got a whole shelf of books behind you. I bet there are at least 10 on there that say people are motivated to do things when it's fulfilling, when they are getting intrinsic reward for that work. And how do we combine extrinsic and intrinsic and bring that together in a workplace?
So many family businesses that we've worked with, and I can think in particular the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, the generational leadership. So mom or dad might be stepping out of the business. They want son or daughter to kind of step in, or they, the individual to step in and take over. Do you, maybe you have some experience with that, and they're first time CEOs or first time leaders, period, much less, stepping into a business that maybe they know a lot about, but have never led a team in their, history. So how does that, have you seen a lot of that, one? And two, what tips or lessons or strategies would you tell a first time stepping into mom or dad's business, taking it over, and not losing that passion that mom or dad had when they started? That's a really big thing.
It's a big thing. And, this goes for any founder-led organization. It doesn't matter if it's your family or not.
Yep.
It's the same issue for founders. It is so much of our identity is tied up in who we are at work.
Right.
And when you add founder, or, and if that founder is the head of a household, all the more so, right? There is a lot of identity that is tied up in being the owner, the founder of a business. Mm-hmm. And so many founders and family owners, they have this vision in their head of what it would be like to not have to be on the grind anymore, and start to step back out of the business. But it's like so many things in life, when we are looking at it, it looks way more attractive than the reality of it feels like, right? And so what most people experience is the founders talking a good game about stepping away, but the behavior is not following. They're still solidly in the place of wanting and having their identity tied to that. And so in terms of tips, one of the things that I would say is, if you are that person who's been tapped to come behind and take over, you have to have a lot of patience.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is, unless there's like a health instance or something that knocks that, and even from that, they will be in their hospital bed telling you how to run the business. So I spent a lot of time coaching the successors on how to manage that relationship.
And I was going to say, that's one of the things we've seen too, that you have to help build a transitional plan. And then it's not okay, I'm gone now, because they're still going to want to have input and make sure that business is staying successful.
And there's in any time you are feeling that tension, what I tell people to do is go to curiosity. When you're feeling that frustration of, I've got this, why are you still in me? Or if you're the founder, you're feeling that frustration of, why is this person not listening to me? I have all this institutional knowledge you should care about. Like you don't know as much as you think you know. The place to go to is curiosity and engaging in a conversation that starts from a place of, tell me about you, listening first. It's, I say all the time, Teresa, if you just follow the 7 habits of highly effective people, if you just put that book by your bedside table, right? So seek first to understand and then be understood. That is that curiosity factor. There's a lot of things like that I just bring and remind people and coach them in the practice of, because those are really solid ways of creating connection. Right. Once somebody feels heard, once they feel like you're interested, there's a technique that I learned many years ago that I use all the time. It's called history map. And so one of the things that I'll do in a small business like this is we'll pick, depending on the age of the business, it might be 2-year cycle, 3-year, 5-year cycle. And we will put the history of the company together, and we'll talk about what happened, and we'll pull the financials and look at what the growth really looked like, and where were the hard times, and how do we get through them. And we tell those institutional stories. And we remind ourselves of when people came in and the value they've created since they've got there. And we celebrate all of these things and how we've all, and so it's that institutional storytelling that it's creating connection at a very deep level for people that really influences trust.
And isn't that what we're all kind of looking for these days?
Yes.
Some kind of connection to something, a purpose, to people or whatever.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. And especially coming out of the pandemic. I mean, so we're talking about what's been my work for a long time. Coming out of the pandemic after 2020, I was again working in these smaller independently owned businesses. And what was happening is there was so much disconnection in the workplace that was created by our experience. So we took away a lot of the social structure in the workplace in the name of public health. So you couldn't sit in the lunchroom together and take a coffee break together. And we covered our faces with masks and all of those things. And that's one essential thing everybody needs, right? Is they need relationship in the workplace. So we took a huge hit to that. And then the second thing people need is they need to feel competent. They need to feel like they can shine. And so all of a sudden, everybody's like, what's the rule today? Oh, we got to change and do it this way. Oh, you can't. So people are feeling really uncertain in their competency, just as a matter of that course.
Right.
And so those are, two substantial things. Now we've taken a ding out of both of those. And then the third piece that everybody needs is this feeling of contribution, right? Of really being able to give their all. However, people could not be fully mentally present. There was a part of their mind that was back at home. Oh, what's going on with my kids? Are they getting through the school thing? I've got to stop at the store and make sure that I get, see if I can get any toilet paper or whatever bacon or whatever the thing is we were running out of. Oh, what if I take something home and get my dad sick or my mom sick or, my husband or whomever, how are we going to deal with that? So people weren't able to be present and contribute in the way that they were accustomed to.
Do you think we can now? Do you think that's coming back?
I think it's coming back to some extent. Well, let me say that for the people who that I were working with, they were essential workers. They've pushed their way through a lot of this.
Right.
It's a whole new dynamic for everybody that got to go home and set up a home office and work remotely. And now this whole back in the office hybrid thing, they are just hitting a new point of this insecurity.
Instability a little bit too, right? Because it's like rubber band.
And discontent. People are expressing more discontent. We're labeling it, right? Quiet firing, quiet quitting, all of this stuff is people talking about their discontent at work. And so yes, we've since the pandemic, what I've been working on, I call culture repair, which is going in. It's very similar to what we just talked about the history map. It's getting people reconnected and remembering that, hey, we know how to be good coworkers.
Right.
We know how to care for one another. We know how to have joy in our workplace, but we've fallen into the habit of giving more attention to our dissatisfiers. And so we've got to work on shifting our mindset back to being a good teammate and really contributing to the whole. And so let's do some focused work and put focused energy in that direction. And so that's what I call the culture repair work. And that's a lot of the work that I am doing right now in organizations. And honestly, you need to be doing that culture repair work anytime you have a disruptive event, and a disruptive event could be laying off people. The disruptive event doesn't even have to be you laying off people. I mean, let's just say that in your town, the major employer has a layoff.
Right.
It's going to affect
the psyche
and concern the people in your business too.
Sure.
So, like the best analogy I love to use is, when you think about this, imagine when your car engine light comes on. When that light comes on, you can choose to ignore it, but eventually the car will no longer go, and the repair is going to be thousands and thousands of dollars. It's going to cost you a lot of money.
Right.
But with the check engine light comes on and you call and you say, hey, my check engine light is on. When can I get in? And in the next, 7 to 10 days, they work you in to check out your car. And there's probably some little repair thing that needs to be done. And yes, it's going to cost you $500, $800, maybe $1,000 to fix it. But that is so much less than what you're going to spend down the road. Culture is the same way. When you have these little disrupting events, that is the check engine light going on, saying it's time to get reconnected. It's time to put more energy back into belonging and shared purpose, and really getting people to feel those key drivers of their satisfaction and happiness, and recognize their control.
Right.
And engaged. Because I used to think before the pandemic, I bought into the idea that culture is something that really flows from the top of the organization. But what the pandemic taught us is that's not true. Culture is everybody in the organization.
Right.
Anybody who is an insider is an architect. And that means we all possess the ability to create the workplace environment that we want. If we want it to be happier, more helpful, kinder, whatever it is, we can start being those things and showing those things and reminding others of those things. And so that in less than 90 days with the companies that I was working with during the pandemic, we were getting people re-engaged, getting their mindset flipped, and helping them get back on track with where they wanted their workplace environment to be. And I am just so passionate about this that I wrote a whole book about it that launched in June called Show Up Positive, and started the Show Up Positive movement, because I really think that if first of all, we have a whole new generation between the Gen Xers, which we are, Teresa, who started this whole independent thinking kind of thing, through the current generations. We've got a whole workforce now that is eager to change the rules. Do things differently.
Right.
And so let's capitalize on that. Let's stop buying into the old models of what it's like to run a business and the role of manager versus employee and these things. And let's create a new way of being together in the workplace.
Which means that, company leaders have to look at, or get to look at, the multi-generational employees have different needs, but the desire and the need to bring them together to create that culture that's going to be the future. What's your foresight? Where's that going to go? I love what you're saying. I think it's so important these days to be thinking that way and to be putting the actions in place. So I guess I would ask, certainly bringing you on board, but are there things that you think they could do on their own today before they get you involved, or someone like you involved, in helping them? What can a leader today do on their own potentially?
There's a lot of things that leaders can do, and not to over promote, but I give you a whole pathway in the Show Up Positive book of things that you can do.
Oh, that's great. We'll put the link in the bio too.
As a leader, and leader meaning anybody who is influencing and leading, not necessarily position based, right? But if you are an owner, a manager of an organization, what can you do? I think there's some really simple things. And one is go on a listening tour. If you think the check engine light might be on, what do? The mechanic goes and starts looking for checking all the parts, right? That's what you need to do. You need to go on a listening tour, check in with your people. Really get a sense, be willing to hear the hard things. You can't, if you put your head in the ground and you cover your ears and you're unwilling to face those things, you don't have to agree. And best tip I ever got, I love Peter Block. He's one of my favorite management consultants of all time. And he said, you can say, I hear you. And that doesn't mean I agree with you. You just ask people questions. You say, I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. You don't have, that doesn't mean I agree with you. You're 100% right. It just means I'm listening. I'm willing to hear what you have to say. And so just start listening, and then you can start identifying sort of themes, find where people's passions are, lean in and invite them in. And then there's just very small things like making sure that every day, or at least every week, you are expressing gratitude and celebrating something with your team.
I think that's wonderful. I think that celebration gets lost a lot of times, especially in an uncertain market like we're in today. It's like, where are things going? People are nervous. Taking that extra time to celebrate the small wins I just think and maybe even the small failures. So what's your thought on that?
I think that's huge. And as an innovator, I'm glad you're bringing that up, because the whole trick of innovation is what I use Oprah Winfrey's language. You fail up. You take the lessons and the learning and you use that to make the next version, the next evolution even better. And so you're going to try a lot of things in your business, and you're going to try a lot of things with your culture and your people that may not be the right thing. And this is that own it moment. So one of my other favorite books, Good to Great, I recommend every business leader take time to really read that book, But what differentiated those top performing leaders was their ability to say, this isn't working or this isn't good, to be really transparent and owning we have a problem, being willing to say, Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah.
But then also saying, however, we're going to get through this. We're going to figure this out together. We're going to come together and make it happen. Right. And then really bringing people together around that purpose.
And isn't that really so important, that in order to really engage your team and your staff, if they know maybe there's a challenge, or maybe they know there's a failure and you're asking them to help you, it's this, okay, we all want to be involved in helping. We want that. And so,
yes,
this intrinsic need to want to give and make it purposeful, but we just don't always, I think leaders sometimes forget that. Right. I think they're in some ways they're thinking they're protecting the individuals, when in fact what they want is to know. They want to know and understand, and then they can help. What's my role in it? Is that what you experience?
Yes. And, I think that in terms of a good guidepost, there are two. One is remembering when you were that person, that younger person or whatever, and saying, how did I want to be treated in this moment? When I made a mistake, when everything went kaflooey because I dropped the ball, how did I want to be treated? A lot of times we go to, how was I treated? And we replicate that behavior that we received, even if it really wasn't that effective for us,
Right.
because that's our model that we have. This is our model of management, is based on the experiences that we have for the most part. But if you can, instead of just reacting and replicating that, if you could say, what did I really need in that moment?
Right.
What would have benefited me the most in that moment? That is one place to get to the right answer. And if you don't have that experience, then the other one is simply to say, substitute the name of somebody you care about.
Yeah.
How would I want my sibling? How would I want my child? How would I want my spouse?
Right.
How would I want my parent to be treated in this moment of error?
Right.
And when you can personalize it that way, it can help you step back from maybe the emotional response, the anger that's getting triggered, so that you can re-engage that rational part of your brain.
Right. I love that. So here's the opposite of that. Because we also talk about a lot of the young professionals that are coming in, and they don't always have necessarily the experience to interpret certain circumstances or things that maybe a more mature leader would want to instruct. What strategies or tips do you tell a young professional on stepping up, asking good questions? I mean, don't sit silently is what I like to say. But what advice do you give young professionals who sit there and sometimes just let it all get to them?
I think that more so than in any other generation, especially in our younger generation that's coming into the workforce, and I can say this because I'm raising children that are in this place, their social anxiety is so high.
It is.
And it prevents them. I just said something yesterday, this is just a funny small example, but we were going to a store that was going to close at 5:00. We're racing across town to get there. And it's a small mom and pop store. And I said to my daughter, why don't you just call them and say, hey, these are the 2 items. We're going to be flying in right before close time. If you want to go ahead and get those to make checkout faster so you guys can get on out. And she was like, oh, I could never do that.
Interesting.
Right.
And I think a lot of people feel that way. A lot of young professionals.
It's an anxiety thing, right? And so I'm her mom. She trusts me. She'll say that to me, but now put her in a workplace.
Right.
And a boss says, do this or do that. And she's like, I'm intimidated. I'm not going to speak up. I'm not going to say things. And so it is good advice to say, ask thoughtful questions, those kinds of things, but it's also important for us as leaders to understand the psychology. I mean, these are true mental health kinds of issues that some of your workforce are bringing through the door with them. And instead of getting impatience, again, when you have more trust in relationship, then they're going to feel more at ease.
Right.
So lean into the relationship and the trust building. Make sure that you are checking in with your team. You know, the ways that I like to show respect to others is being timely.
Yeah.
You know, giving thoughtful input, acknowledging you when I pass you in the hallway. What do you receive as respect? What is important to you? Right. It seems like an awkward conversation when it's not always facilitated by someone, but that's, you know, what's like one of my go-tos that we're going to do in a team group is when we talk about our norms, we're going to talk about what does respect look like? Because it can be different to different people. What does trust look like to you versus me? And so that's that psychological safety. You know, how do you build psychological safety? It is in normalizing conversations that invite the expression of people's needs.
And I mean, I don't want to quote any specific percentages, but the percentages of anxiety inside of companies, what I'm seeing is so high. The majority, not the minority. And so it seems obvious, but are we just missing the cues, or are we just running so fast that we don't have time to look at it? What is your sense of the trends that are going on? Because you've given us the tips on what we could do. How do we recognize it? And we shouldn't even wait for the check engine light.
Yes, I think you being preemptive, like consider this like maintenance, right? Like normal maintenance that you need to do. Especially in smaller businesses, but this is true in corporations as well. But you know, roles in smaller businesses tend to be very fluid. People just, you know, they get adaptable, they jump in, they do whatever needs to get done, those kinds of things. As you build, you know, once your team grows past about 12 people, you really got to begin to create structured jobs. And really have more clarity around roles. And so in smaller organizations, one of the things that I think fuels so much of the anxiety is there isn't clear role definition.
And how am I successful? Give me my.
And so people don't know. I think in larger companies, so many of our management roles, especially middle management roles, their jobs are sometimes 60-70% doer and only 30 to 40% allocated to actually the role of leading people. And so I don't even know if they're being given the skills and the training that they need, and that level of development.
I think it's a very good point, because I have seen some metrics and also been involved in some of the areas where we're putting people in leadership roles, but not taking the time or the financial investment to help them with leadership skills. And if you think about, you know, if you work for a major, you know, manufacturer of jetliner airplanes, you know, that's not a good thing. So mistakes happen. And so the importance of that teaching the leadership and developing out people just appears to be more and more important than ever.
You know, it's been 15 years since I walked in through the corporate hallways on a day-to-day basis as an internal employee. But what I can tell you is, as long ago as that was, in my team, people all over our department wanted to work on my team.
I
And the
bet.
reason they wanted to work on my team had to do with the way that I operated as the manager of that
Sure.
team. And this is the secret sauce. The secret sauce is you always start with a question. You
Mm,
know, if I had received feedback about the performance of one of my team members at at a meeting or something that was not what I expected it to be, I would feel a little frustrated by that. I might, I was like anybody else. I would be like, what, why, like,
yeah,
but when it came time, when I pulled them aside, and a lot of times this would be after an after hours conversation, we get through the work of the day, and then at 5 o'clock, I'm like, give me 30 minutes, let's talk. I would start with a question. I heard this meeting did not go so well today. Tell me a little bit about what you
very
were thinking
right.
walking into the meeting.
So could that,
And
I mean, not to cut you off, but could that also, and this is sometimes a common thing that I hear when I'm working, even in, the world that I work in. So someone brings up to the manager of someone else that they didn't like how something was happening. And the individual that's caught in the middle, that was, the one brought up, that individual is lost at what to do. And so, what would you tell that individual to do, and how to deal with his manager, how to deal with the individual that's making a sort of a critical, not complaint, but let's just say it's a real criticism that potentially could do damage to the individual?
what I would say is go to the source.
Yeah.
That's the only reasonable advice to give. Get out of the middle, go to the source. And when you go to the source, you got to check your intention.
Yeah.
So this is my number one guidance for anybody who wants to be a leader.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you have to manage people, because going to the source is a leadership play.
Yes. Love it.
Right? It's a leadership play. It's also a show up positive play. It's
Yeah.
standing up for yourself. So your intention has to be something that is mutually beneficial.
Right.
If you go into a conversation and your intention is to call somebody out, to make sure they know they've made a mistake, to stand up to, I'm going to stand up to my bully. If that's the mindset that you have, don't do it. Just stop yourself right there so you can get in the right mindset.
Right.
The right mindset is, okay, this we are not in a good place right now. This is broken. The check engine light is on about this relationship.
Yeah.
I want the check engine light to go off. And so how am I going to repair this miscommunication or this misunderstanding that is happening, which means I've got to be willing to hear and change in as much as I'm asking somebody else to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
To be open.
So you never get to change anybody else. You have to understand that you never get to be in charge of somebody. It doesn't matter. If you're a manager, you can tell people all day long, and you might get compliance for a little while.
Yeah.
But if people don't really believe that there's any value in that, that compliance will, and eventually it'll erode.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's important that you have that right mindset of, okay, I'm going to understand how I'm contributing to this issue with this person.
Yeah.
I'm going in willing to do my part, and I'm hoping to build enough of a bridge that they're going to meet me part way. That's the best that you're going to get. And then you go into the conversation and you say, I've received some feedback that, this is really not feeling right, or this isn't occurring in the way you want it to, or whatever the right language is.
Yeah.
And I'd like to understand that more, because I don't want this experience that we're having together.
And isn't that really what you want your culture of your company to be?
Yes. Yes. And when you start practicing things and you show other people, and those words, this is not the experience that
Right.
I want us to be having together.
Right.
That's such simple language. It's not, I don't want you complaining to others about me, or I don't want you to be disappointed in my work. You don't have to label it in any way. Keep
Yeah.
it very general. This is not the
Yeah.
experience that I want us to be having
Right.
together. So I'd like to understand more
Right.
about what I can do.
Right. Right. I love
So
that.
you start from a place of listening.
Yeah.
Then after, hopefully the person is going to say to you, well, is there anything I can do, or what can I do? And if they don't, you can always say, may I make a request or two of you?
Yeah.
And if they say, I don't have time, I got to go, whatever, you
You did your
again,
part.
you only
Yeah.
get to do what you can
Right.
do.
Right. Right. Now,
And I don't feel like that makes you a doormat.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like that makes you a leader, a person who's standing up for what you want to create in your workplace, which,
Right.
as you pointed out, this is the culture.
Right.
It's
That's the
this is the
culture
way
that
I want to
fosters
connect with people.
innovation. Yeah. You want creativity, you want innovation, you want to be thoughtful that if things aren't working the way they are, that you've got open communication to be able to, pivot or do whatever's necessary. I think that advice is so crucial. I also, feel like that would alleviate some of the social anxiety if we know that we have that culture.
Yes, yes. The most of the time, fear is lying to us.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're feeling that anxiety, when when it's somebody that I'm close to, I tell people all the time, they say, "Oh my gosh, you make this look so easy, and this is amazing."
Yeah.
And I'm like, when it's my own stuff, it's not this easy. Like I have
It's the
all the
same here.
same struggles
Yeah.
that you have.
Yeah.
But when you're feeling all of that anxiety, and I feel it when it's my stuff too,
Right.
you really have to just have that moment of saying to yourself, like,
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Like, this feels a little scary. This could maybe go sideways. What's the worst thing that's really going to happen? What am I most concerned about
Right.
here?
Yeah.
And a lot of times that it's not a real grounded fear. Like, the worst thing is the person's going to ignore me. The worst thing is they might yell at me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like this person holds the purse strings, and they're going to, maybe I won't get that next raise, or I'll get
Right.
dinged on my performance review or
Right.
whatever. And if that's what's going on, get out.
Well, I was going to say, isn't that helping the individual make a different choice? It's like
Yes.
at some point you've done everything you can. So maybe it's time to start looking for a better environment, a better workplace.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've almost been talking an hour. I can't even believe it. So are there any last tips that we should know about you, or last lessons you want to leave us all with?
I think that the most important thing that I've probably covered, but I want to reiterate because it's just such an important message. And that is, you do not have to be the victim
That's a
in
very
your story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Change your story.
Yeah. Love it.
You can be the hero of your story simply by having the tough conversation, by choosing to follow more positive norms that you find to be intrinsically motivating to you,
Yeah.
instead of feeling like you have to go along with, if everybody else is complaining in the break room, walk away. You don't have to participate in that. If somebody's tearing down a coworker and you're just like, I am over the way everybody is backstabbing everybody, then just choose. I'm not gonna participate in that anymore.
Right. Which I think is great advice. I'm a big journaler. I don't know about you, but I've been journaling since I was in college, and writing out the sort of vision of my story for the future, and the specificity that you need in that, because if we really want our goals, one of mine was always to live in Denver. I never put Colorado behind Denver and didn't know there was a Denver, North Carolina. So if you end up in Denver, North Carolina, were you specific about your story and what you want? So just a lesson for those that maybe want to craft their story, be detailed.
Well, I must say that the mountains around Denver, North Carolina are majestic in their own way.
They
right?
are. They are. No, well, thank you, Rita. It's been a pleasure. And we'll make sure that your book, links, and information about you are available to everyone. But I really appreciate you joining us. And I think what wonderful advice and counseling and strategies that you've shared with us today on Future Forward.
Well, thank you for having me again. It's been a delightful conversation, Teresa.
Well, thank you. And we'll stop our recording.